Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here on a Friday lunchtime, at least for many of us. We're gonna get started here. Just letting you know we are recording this broadcast. So for people who couldn't make it, or if you have to leave early, you can get this recording sent to you. We're also gonna keep screens off at the beginning. We'll have some time at the end if there are any questions or anything anyone wants to discuss. But until then, we'll just start moving. So. Um, my name is Aaron Pomerantz. I'm the Assistant Director of Research and Evaluation here at the Doerr Institute, and I'm the instructor for our Demystifying Measurement in Leader Development course that we're here to discuss today and talk a little bit about. Just an overall roadmap about how the next 30 minutes or so is going to go. We're going to start by talking about the philosophical background of the course, why we even teach this course, what it's intended to do, talk about its purpose. We'll go into the nitty-gritty of the information, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions. Just a little bit about myself and why I teach this course. In my previous life, I was a psychology professor. I specialized in quantitative methods and measurement, and teaching this course now at the Doerr Institute is one of my favorite things to do because I really enjoyed the chance when I came here to apply these ideas of measurement and evaluation to the topic of leadership and leader development. I think it's one of the most important things that we can do in higher education, and it's one of the ways I get to still not just apply these principles in my own work and here at Rice, but also help other people do it in their own contexts. As a former college professor, I like starting things with quotes. This is one of my favorite quotes from Lord Kelvin, that to measure is to know. If you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. Measurement is the core of science. And even though Kelvin was a chemist, this holds true for whatever scientific discipline you're in, whatever scientific question you're asking. If we want to improve something, we have to measure it. To think like a scientist is to measure. It is the central issue of asking empirical questions. And by empirical questions, I don't just mean abstract scientific questions like, oh, like how does the parasympathetic nervous system work? Or how do we make better decisions? I mean questions like, is something better or different than something else? That's an empirical question. We need to measure that. Does something work? Empirical question. We need to measure that. Questions of ROI or efficacy or efficiency, all of these are empirical questions, and thus we need to answer them with some form of measurement, and using measurement is what lets us be confident in the answers we see, but only when we do it correctly. And within leader development and leadership development, we have a really rich interdisciplinary body of work. It is a science. Leadership and leader development are science. And they've been informed by some really incredible minds and some really incredible work, but there's also a lot of noise. And in fact, when I first got involved in leadership and campus leadership and campus leader development at my previous job, when I brought up the topic of measurement and approaching this scientifically, I was kind of rebuffed, and I basically heard some variety, no matter who I talked to, of the answer that I know it when I see it. You may have heard this about leader development in your own contexts on your own campus. You may have heard it for a ton of other issues, like vaccines, scientific issues, even just knowing that something works broadly. Oh, I know it works. I don't need to measure it scientifically. We don't need to bring science into this. People might talk about instinct or a sixth sense, or they rely on their experience and their gut. Well, your gut can work for certain topics and certain questions, but not empirical ones. And in fact, relying on something like, I know it when I see it, can lead you to a very, very wrong conclusion. Now, before I became a psychologist, I worked in education, specifically with museums, and I did a lot of animal research and animal outreach, and I really like using animals as an example, so please indulge me here. But this is a rock hyrax, and for the longest time, people, when they were trying to categorize what kind of animal this was, they relied on their eyes. They're like, I think we can guess what this is by looking at how it behaves and looking at what it looks like. It's roughly the size of a gopher or a groundhog. So people assumed it was related to maybe rodents or rabbits, maybe squirrels, guinea pigs, something like that. But its actual closest relatives are the elephant and then the dugong and the manatee, because the hyrax is a member of a family called Afrotherium. What was needed to discover this was not knowing what an animal was based on seeing it, but using the right measurement tool, in this case, molecular phylogeny and DNA testing, to realize actually, no matter what it looks like, the animal it is genetically the closest related to is hundreds of times its size and has a trunk. So that's all well and good for biology, but what about leader development? But well, the same principles apply here. Measurement is absolutely necessary to tell if we're doing leader development well. Measurement is essential to knowing that we're actually doing what we claim we're doing, because leader development asks empirical questions. It's an empirical issue. We ask questions like, can we make people better leaders? How do I know a leader development program is working? What approaches work best for leader development? If we just rely on our gut, if we rely on knowing it when we see it, if we don't use proper measurement, we can reach some really dangerous, or at the very best case scenario, ineffective outcomes. And this is really important because leader development is one of the primary claims of higher education, period. A majority of schools claim, a majority of higher education institutions claim in some way that they develop leaders, that students who attend a college or university are going to be made into leaders. So that's a promise. That's our institutions, that's us as representatives of those institutions making a claim and making a promise. And I believe we owe it to the public, to our students, and to ourselves, frankly, to be asking those questions the right way. And that involves using measurement. Now, there are practical concerns here too. Leader development's a booming industry. Some estimates place national expenditure on leader development at over $370 billion a year. And when done in the context of college student leader development, at both the undergraduate and the graduate level, there are some really important practical outcomes. It can lead to higher student retention and well-being. It can lead to higher graduate job placement and salary, increased alumni engagement, and more community-oriented campuses. These are practical things that we all want, but they only come about if the programs are working. They only come about from programs that are doing things the right way, which means it only comes about if we can measure the program properly and know that the program is working and know what the program is doing. Otherwise, we risk numerous ineffective leader development outcomes, from wasted resources to lost credibility to misguided decision-making. I will say that in the years I've been doing this, I've never come across somebody who I think is doing this out of laziness or bad intentions. I've never met somebody who thinks that who takes pleasure or doesn't even care that their leader program works. People care that their leader development programs work. They want them to work. They have good intentions. But a lot of the failures of leader development programs and broader developmental programs throughout, like things like student affairs or even educational programs designed to expand educational capacity, they fail because of a lack of good measurement. When people tend to measure programs outcomes, they tend to do so in a way that like the following. They'll look at number of completions, a willingness to recommend programs. Would you recommend a friend take this program from us? Or some variety of the question, did you have fun? Did you enjoy yourself? Would you come back? These are what we call process measures, and they're very important from an engagement perspective. If people don't have a good time, they're not going to come back. So it doesn't matter if it's the best leader development program in the world. If you're not delivering it in a way that engages students, then you're not doing a good job. So process measures aren't irrelevant from an engagement perspective, but they don't tell us what we need to know about whether or not a program works. In fact, they just assume a program works. So if it's not working, they can really badly lead us astray. So as an example, let's say I'm going to compare two different events via number of completions, willingness to recommend programs, and some variety of the question, did you have fun? One event, here on the right, this is actually a picture of such an event that we host here at the Doerr Institute for New Leaders, could be a leader development program. This is one of our Catalyst modules, which focuses on very specific competencies and issues related to leadership. And I could compare that against a movie party where I serve college students pizza. If I ask them, did they enjoy it and would they recommend it to somebody else, and I look at the raw number of attendees, if I don't know what's going on between the two different programs, I would based on the numbers alone, I would assume that the movie and pizza party is the more effective leader development outcome. But the problem is that that's totally the wrong signal to be sending. However, most leader development programs, both in and beyond higher education, rely primarily or entirely on process measures. And this has consequences for our ability to tell if our programs are working. So I don't believe in punching down, and I don't believe in punching outside. So the numbers I'm about to show you come from Rice University. We took these a few years ago, but we have replicated this at other schools. Rice, like many universities, claims to develop leaders. But several years ago, what we wanted to do was basically see, okay, well, if we develop leaders, students, as they attend Rice, should go up in their leadership capacity and their leadership identity. So what we measured was leader identity specifically. Do they see themselves as a leader? This is one of the most fundamental ways you can measure somebody's leadership. One of the most fundamental ways you can tell if a leader development program is working is if leader identity goes up. And what you'll see here is that both for graduates and undergraduates, there is no functional rise in score. There's a 0.02 rise from freshman to sophomore year and a 0.02 decrease across 5 years of grad school. Those are not significant changes. The fact was that, yeah, just attending Rice didn't change leader identity or make people into leaders once we measured it the proper way. And this was quite impactful when we were able to show these numbers to leadership and say, hey, I know we're making the claim that we're developing leaders, but if that were true, measurement should show it, and it's not. But by the same token, we were able to look at our leader development programs here at Doerr. These are our 3 coaching-centered programs: Activation, which is one-on-one coaching; Synthesis, which is group coaching; and Cohorts, which is theme-based group coaching. It's a little newer. And what we were able to do is look at changes pre to post. So these represent effect sizes. So this isn't 0.73 points or 0.42 points. This is in effect size units. But what this shows was that there was significant changes before they attended our program and after they attended our program. And these were all significant increases, controlling for variables like age or gender, socioeconomic status, field of study, what have you. Measurement, the same way it showed that overall just attending Rice didn't change leader identity or leadership capacity, attending our programs did have that change. So one of our first principles at the Doerr Institute is that effective leader development requires using the correct measurements in the correct way, because otherwise we don't know if we're being effective. We don't even know necessarily what we're doing. And functionally, we're breaking our promises to our students, to the public, and to ourselves, not only about our specific programs, but about our fundamental mission as institutions of higher education. So why this course exists. As I said, leader development and leadership development are sciences. These are disciplines with strong literatures. We've even contributed to that literature from the Doerr Institute with the book Leadership Reckoning. We build a lot in our everyday practice here on people like David Day and his recent book, Developing Leaders in Leadership. But we also know that we're really privileged to have not just the Doerr Institute here, but also a research and evaluation team. We also recognize that a lot of people don't. Even people, and even when they have researchers who do things like this part-time, even people who are trained in research can often struggle to apply those skills to the real-world settings of leader development. Leader development is not a null hypothesis significance testing situation. It's not a randomized control experiment. We recognize that. And very often across campuses, it's a few individuals who are given limited resources who still want to develop their students and fulfill their promises about leader development in a meaningful, impactful way. And so as we started talking with people, both through the Leadership for Public Purpose classification through Carnegie, and through broader efforts about leader development in higher ed, we quickly came to realize that it was all well and good for us to talk down as if we had this, as you know, and we have this wisdom because we have these resources, but it's far more important that we would be able to share these things in a meaningful way that is practical and applicable in everyday leader development contexts. So what this course is not, before I talk about what this course is not, I want to talk about what this course is, rather. I want to talk about what this course is not. And it's not a stats course. I love teaching stats. I miss teaching statistics. It was one of my favorite classes to teach in grad school. It was one of my favorite classes to teach as a professor. I'm weird. I love teaching stats. But that's not why we're here. We are not going to be doing math in this course. It's also not the one true perfect guide to leader development. That book doesn't exist, or at the very least shouldn't exist, because if it exists, it would be lying, and it would certainly not be something that we would publish from the Doerr Institute. The goal here is not to tell you what to do, it's to help you do what you need to do in your context and figure out what that looks like in your context. The big word way of putting this is the principle of equifinality. The same outcome can be reached via multiple paths. There are no right or wrong ways necessarily to develop leaders. It depends on your students, your context, your resources. The same outcome can be reached by multiple paths, but you won't know if it's working unless you're measuring it. So this course exists to equip you to design, evaluate, and defend leader development initiatives using practical, evidence-based measurement tools tailored to your context. This is entirely a practical course designed to help you where you're at and give you the tools, the strategies, and take-home deliverables to start doing this in your own contexts. So, who is this course for? Broadly speaking, it's for professionals responsible for leader development in higher ed, nonprofits, or industry. We also often have coaches and consultants who just want to measure their impact, not just the effort expended. Assessment and research staff who might be attempting to adapt their skills to leader development programs. But most broadly, this is for anyone who wants to build, improve, or defend your leader development programs. So with that in mind, I want to talk about what we learn in this course and what we do in this course. So broadly speaking, what we learn to define and measure what matters. We aren't going to tell you to do leader development the way we do it. We want to help you figure out what do you need to measure to do leader development the way you want to do it and be able to tell if it's working in your context. We talk about choosing the right tools to collect meaningful data. We talk about designing practical, credible evaluation plans, and we'll return to this in a second. This is one of the biggest things we have from this course. It's not just about abstract knowledge. It's about making sure you have something to take home and apply in a real, practical way that basically as soon as the course is over, you can get started, get a running head start. And we talk about, once you do that, how you can leverage that evidence to improve your programs and engage your stakeholders. How do you get people to care about leader development, to see what you're doing, and come alongside you in this pursuit? So that's what we learn. What do we actually do? It's a two-phase course. Phase one is the seminar period. It's 7 weeks. It runs from September 11th to October 23rd. And it takes the form of 7 3-hour Zoom seminars with breaks. We are not just sitting here for 3 hours. And we will meet on Fridays from noon to 3 p.m. Central. It's administered via the Canvas learning platform. Once you register, you'll get an email that gives you instructions on how to join our Canvas. And we use primarily the textbook Measuring the Mist, which we publish, but we have other readings too that we go through and we discuss every week. And we call it the seminar period because it is truly a seminar. It's a very interactive class. This is not something where we have 40 or 50 people a session. We try to keep it relatively small because we want, as trite as this sounds, I promise you I'm being genuine here, we want to learn from each other. Yes, there are top-down things we're gonna go over. I do talk during these things. We do present information, whether it be principles of effective measurement, pre-post design analysis. How do you make causal claims? We do talk about things like that, but we also spend a lot of time discussing, and what does that look like for you? And what are some problems you might face? What are some advantages you might have? What are the timeframes you need to think about? Who can you engage on your campus? How do you communicate these findings to people? How do you make sure that you're taking these broader principles of measurement and using them and making them as powerful as you can within your context? So that's our first 7 weeks that we spend together. And then in phase 2, we have what we call the consulting period. Throughout the first section, we start designing an impact assessment plan. This is an actual workable, concrete plan to evaluate a program at your institution in your context. It's not abstract. It's not, what would evaluating look like if I worked at the Doerr Institute? It's no, where are you doing leader development right now? Or where do you want to start doing leader development in the immediate future? And how will you measure it? And across the consulting period, you work on that in collaboration with me. I still hold office hours on the Fridays, and I take the time to meet with you all one-on-one to kind of work together to create a plan that works for you. And this is what lets you get not just a digital accreditation for the Doerr measurement, for the Doerr Leadership Solutions Measurement Specialist badge, but it also helps you take something home. It's not just abstract principles. It's like, no, I have an actual document that I can start working on, and you get feedback from me and we refine it. The goal is not to fail anyone. This is not even really a pass-fail course. The goal, as I see it, is for me to do as much as is humanly possible on my end to make sure that you emerge with an actual plan that you can start using as soon as you want to. So just some practical things. Tuition is starts at $19.99 for non-academic and non-nonprofit participants. If you work in the academic or nonprofit space, we automatically drop that down to $1,000. There are group rates available. If there are any other pricing questions you might have, please feel free to get in touch. We don't want pricing to be a huge barrier for anyone. There are also some deadlines to keep in mind. The application deadline is August 27th. We'll be making the final decisions by September 4th, and payment is due on September 8th so that we can begin and just get a move on the 11th. Before I go into questions, there's a couple of links here. There's this QR code on the left under the course application that will take you to, as it says, the course application. But I also have my Calendly here, this QR code on the right. I also have the link if you just want to screenshot it or save it for later. My email's there too. If we're about to turn cameras on and you can ask some questions if you want to. You can use the chat if you'd like. But if you don't want to do that on a seminar or anything like that, or on a webinar, feel free to reach out to me. I've already been having a few meetings with people one-on-one. I'd love to find some time to just connect and talk about what this might look like. So with that, that's it from me, and we'll open it up for questions.
I've given everyone permission to use your microphone or to turn your camera on. So if you have a question, just turn your camera on or speak up. And you can also put it in the question chat if you are interested in doing it that way too. Oh, hi, Christopher, you're on mute. I'm sorry if you're having trouble. You can put your message in the chat if you like. Oh, Chris, he says, is this offered? Christopher asks if this is offered in the fall and spring.
We typically offer it only in the fall for right now. If there's enough interest in a spring cohort, we are open to that. But right now, we only offer it in the fall.
All right, I think that's all of our questions. Aaron, if you'd like to wrap it up.
All right. Well, as I said, the course application is here. My Calendly is open. Feel free to shoot me an email. Get scheduled on my Calendly. Kelly, I think there'll be an email going out after this with some other information. I hope you all were able to answer any questions just with the general presentation. And yeah, I look forward to hopefully seeing some of you in our course this fall. Bye, everyone.